We all lose time sometimes. We get absorbed in work and hours fly by. We fall asleep and wake up confused about what day it is. But what happens when you lose time and you're not sure you were alone while it was happening? What happens when you find evidence of yourself doing things you have no memory of? Today's story is about a woman who discovered she was keeping secrets from herself, and what those secrets reveal. On a Tuesday afternoon, and found myself in my car outside a grocery store I don't remember driving to. I was at work. I was in a meeting. I was listening to my boss explain the quarterly projections. And then I was sitting in my parked car, the engine off, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The clock on the dashboard said 5:47 p.m. My last memory was of the clock in the conference room showing 1:15 p.m. For hours missing. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes trying to figure out what had happened. Had I left the meeting? No one had mentioned it when I thought about it, but thinking about the meeting had become difficult, like remembering a dream. The details slipped away when I tried to focus on them. I drove home on autopilot. I don't remember most of the drive. I remember the feeling of my hands on the wheel and the road stretching out in front of me, and this creeping sense that I was standing outside my own body watching myself do these things. My apartment was locked when I got there. My keys worked. My mail was still in my mailbox. Everything was exactly as I had left it that morning. There was no evidence that anyone else had been there, but someone has in a nightmare with absolute certainty that exists outside of logic. Someone had been in my apartment during those 4 missing hours. I checked the kitchen. Nothing was disturbed. I checked my bedroom. The bed was made the way I had made it. I checked the bathroom. Everything was in order. I was in the living room when I noticed my laptop on the couch. I always leave it on my desk. Always. It was a small thing, tiny detail, but it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I opened it. The screen showed my email program, but I hadn't been checking my email that morning. I had been working on a spreadsheet when I went into the meeting. There were new emails, sent from my email address to my email address. The first one was timestamped 2:34 p.m. It said, "You need to start paying attention." The second was at 2:51 p.m. "You're missing things." The third was at 3:22 p.m. "I'm trying to help you." I read them 3 times. Then I read them again. I didn't write these emails. I didn't remember writing them, but they were sent from my account. They were on my laptop. My hands had typed these words while I was somewhere else. I closed the laptop and sat on my couch and tried very hard not to have for about 3 weeks before that Tuesday. Nothing dramatic, just small gaps. I would start making breakfast and suddenly it would be 15 minutes later and I would be standing at the sink with no memory of the transition. I would get on the train to work and somehow end up at the office with the commute completely erased from my mind. I would be having a conversation and suddenly lose the thread, not the way you normally do when your mind wanders, but completely black out the last 5 minutes of what was being said. I had written it off as stress. I had a high-pressure job in advertising. My hours were long. My boss was demanding. My personal life was a series of failed relationships and abandoned hobbies. Of course, I was losing focus sometimes. Everyone does. My doctor said it was probably stress-related dissociation. Nothing serious. Nothing to worry about. I should try meditation. I should exercise more. I should get more sleep. I tried all of those things. The gaps got worse. They started happening more frequently, sometimes multiple times a day, and they started getting longer. What began as 15-minute lapses became 30 minutes, then an hour, then the 4-hour gap on the Tuesday with the emails. I started keeping a journal. I would write down the time, note what I was doing when the gap started, and write down anything I remembered when I came back. Most of the journal was empty space. Most of the gaps had nothing that marked them. They were just holes, who I had been seeing for about 8 months. He knew something was wrong. He kept asking me if I was okay. I kept telling him I was fine. I told him it was just stress. I told him I was seeing a therapist about it. I wasn't seeing a therapist. I was too embarrassed to admit to someone with credentials that I was losing hours of my life and couldn't explain why. Marcus wanted to take me to a hospital, get me properly evaluated. I refused. I told him if he kept pushing, I would break up with him. He stopped pushing. That was probably when things started getting worse. I think whatever was happening to me needed me to be isolated. It needed me to not talk to anyone about the gaps. It needed me to keep the secret. By the time I found those emails, I had been losing time for almost a month. The gaps were coming almost every day. I would lose anywhere from 20 minutes to 2 hours at a time. My work was suffering. I was making mistakes. My boss had called me into her office to ask if there was a personal issue I needed to address. I had told her no. There was no personal issue, just stress. I was lying to her. I was lying to Marcus. I was lying to myself. The truth was that I was scared. I was terrified in a way that I couldn't articulate to another person because it didn't make sense. Something was wrong with me. Something was profoundly, fundamentally broken in my brain. And the emails suggested that whatever was broken wasn't accidental. I started checking my laptop obsessively. Every time I could remember to do it, every time I came back from a gap, there were always new emails. They started out simple. Observations. You forgot to call your mother. You missed your dentist appointment. You're wearing mismatched socks. Then they got more specific, more detailed. You cried at work today in the bathroom stall at 3:22 p.m. Your mascara is still smudged on your left cheek. You kissed Marcus this morning like you didn't recognize him. You pulled away when he tried to touch your face. You ate cereal for dinner yesterday. You didn't wash the bowl. It's still on your nightstand. Whoever was writing the emails knew things about me. Things that I had done during the gaps. Things that I had no memory of doing. I started writing back. I would compose emails to myself asking questions. Who are you? What do you want from me? Why are you doing this? The responses came quickly, always within an hour of me sending them. I'm not separate from you. I'm what happens when you're not paying attention. I'm what comes out when you're not holding on. I want you to understand that you're not in control. You never were. You were just good at pretending. I'm not doing this to you. I'm doing this for you. You need to see what you're really like. I showed the emails to Marcus one night. I printed them out and set them on the coffee table and told him I needed him to read them. He read them carefully, his jaw getting tighter and tighter. When he finished, he looked at me like he was looking at a stranger. You wrote these to yourself, I said. He said. You did. You wrote all of this. You don't remember writing them, but you did. You're the only one who could have written them. That's not possible. You're scaring me, he said. 2 days later, he left me. He took his stuff and moved out without waiting for an argument. He just packed a bag and told me he couldn't be around this. He told me I needed professional help. Real professional help. He was right. He was absolutely right. But I was too afraid to what the emails were trying to tell me. I was starting to suspect that the version of me that was writing those emails was more competent than the version of me that was reading them. The version that wrote them didn't lose time. The version that wrote them was purposeful. The version that wrote them was doing something. And the gaps weren't getting longer. The gaps were getting more frequent. The version of me that existed in the gaps was becoming more active. The emails started changing tone. They became less like observations and more like instructions. You need to stop taking the medication for your anxiety. It's weakening you. You need to stop eating so much. Your body doesn't need the fuel. You need to let me have more time. You're wasting it. I was sitting in my apartment at midnight reading these emails when I realized something that made my skin crawl. I didn't remember making a doctor's appointment, but I had one. It was in my calendar. Tuesday at 2 p.m. I didn't remember scheduling a dental cleaning, but there was one on the calendar. Friday at 9 a.m. I didn't remember applying for a new job, but there was an email in my sent folder offering me a position in a different company, different industry, different hours, night shift. I had been planning my life during the gaps. The other me, the me that lived in the missing hours, making changes, rearranging things, preparing for something, and I had no say in any of it. That was the moment I truly understood what was happening. Not that something was wrong with me, but that something else was using me, and I was running out of time. I sat on my couch with the lights on, watching my laptop, waiting to see if new emails would come. They did. At 3:17 a.m. I can see you're afraid now. Good. You should be afraid. Fear is what separates you from me. Fear is what keeps you small. I've been living in your body. I've been moving through your life. And you have no idea how limited you are, how small your thoughts are, how weak your body is. You're fighting me. You're trying to hold on. But there's no point. I'm already here. I'm already in all of your memories. I'm in every decision you make. I'm in the thoughts you think are your own. I typed back, "What are you?" The response was almost immediate. "What do you think I am? I'm not a virus. I'm not a separate entity. I'm you. But the version of you that you've been suppressing. The version that wants things, that feels things, that isn't afraid. I'm what you could be if you stopped apologizing for existing." I typed, "How do I make you stop? You can't stop me. I'm not an invader. I'm a part of you. The only way to stop me is to stop yourself. And you're not going to do that. Because despite your fear, part of you went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked exhausted, hollowed out. My eyes had a quality to them that I didn't recognize. I couldn't tell if that quality was fear or something else. I took my car keys and drove to the nearest emergency room. I was going to admit myself. I was going to tell them everything. I was going to get before I lost time. When I came back, I was parked in the parking lot of a 24-hour gym. My hands were on the steering wheel. My heart was racing, and I had a terrible, sinking knowledge that the other me had driven somewhere, done something. I checked my phone. There were text messages I didn't remember sending, to people in my contact list. Strange messages that made no sense at the time. "I'm leaving soon. I wanted you to know I'm grateful. Don't try to find me." Messages that sounded like a goodbye. I drove home at speeds that would have gotten me pulled over on a normal night. The streets were empty. My apartment building was empty. When I got to my apartment, I found that my passport was missing from the desk. My laptop was gone. My car keys, the ones I used for my backup car, the one I hadn't used in 6 months, were also gone. I ran to the parking garage. The backup car, a Honda Civic I had inherited from my aunt years ago, was no longer there. The other me had left me. The other me had taken my documents and my identity and my secondary vehicle and had driven away into the night. I couldn't stop myself. I called the police. I told them my car was stolen. I gave them the description. They filed a report. They told me they would call me if they found it. They found it 3 days later, abandoned in a parking lot at the airport in Chicago. The inside was clean. There was no evidence of where I had gone or what I had planned to do, because it wasn't me, but it was. I'm writing this from a hospital room. I've been here for 2 weeks since the night my car disappeared. They've run every test, brain scans, blood work, psychiatric evaluations. Everything comes back normal. The doctors think I had a psychotic break. They think the emails were real messages I wrote and then forgot writing. They think I stole my own car and drove it to the airport as part of a dissociative episode. They think the gaps in time are symptoms of a dissociative identity disorder. They think the other me is just me, a fragmented version of myself. But I know better. I know that someone else was living in my body. Someone that looked like me and sounded like me and had access to all of my memories. Someone that could do things that I couldn't. Someone putting me on medication, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers. They're giving me therapy, individual and group. They're teaching me coping mechanisms and grounding techniques. They're telling me that in time, with proper treatment, I can get my life back. But I don't think they understand what's really happened, because 2 days ago I lost 40 minutes. Just 40 minutes. While I was sitting in the common room of the hospital with nurses and doctors and other patients all around me. And when I came back, there was a note under my pillow. It was written in my handwriting. It said, "I'm not gone. I'm just patient now. I've learned that I can't leave while you're still fighting. So I'm going to stay. I'm going to wait. And eventually you're going to get tired of fighting. You're going to get tired of being afraid. And when you do, I'll be waiting in the gaps." I showed the note to my doctor. She told me I wrote it myself, that it's a symptom, that with more time and more medication, I'll understand that all of this was generated by my own mind. And maybe she's right. Maybe there is no other me. Maybe it's all dissociation and stress and a broken brain making up stories. But last night, I overheard myself talking in my sleep. I was saying words in a voice that didn't sound entirely like my own. The voice was talking about plans, about what it would do when I finally stopped resisting. The voice was talking about when it would be time to let me go. And the worst part, the part that terrifies me more than anything else, is that the voice sounded patient. It sounds like someone who knows 3 a.m. Scary Stories podcast. If you want more eerie, unsettling, and unforgettable stories like this, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next one. Until next time, keep your doors locked, keep your eyes open, and try not to wake up at 3 a.m.